Antarctica's secret history, extraterrestrial colony created elite bloodline rulers. Secret space program whistleblower, Corey Goode, has revealed more startling information about Antarctica and its history as an extraterrestrial refugee colony established roughly 60,000 years ago. He asserts that the alien refugees found advanced builder race technologies there that were created over 1.8 billion years ago. Equally intriguing is his claim that some of the extraterrestrial refugees are still alive today in stasis chambers, located inside 30-mile-long motherships buried under 2,000 feet of ice below Antarctica's Ross Ice Shelf. In Goode's February 21, 2017 Cosmic Disclosure TV episode, he stated that he continues to receive briefings from a USAF-run secret space program about the excavations in Antarctica being conducted by archaeologists, which began in 2002. In an earlier article, I described what Goode told me about the USAF briefings, and what he had encountered during a January 2017 visit to Antarctica with an inner-Earth civilization called the Anshar. In the Cosmic Disclosure episode, Goode provides more details and graphic depictions of what he personally witnessed in Antarctica. He describes the extraterrestrials as pre-Adamites, who were originally from Mars, and a super-Earth, Maldek, whose remains now form the asteroid belt. During their long history, he says that the inhabitants of Mars and Maldek fought a series of high-tech wars back when Mars was a moon of Maldek. Approximately 500,000 years ago, these wars came to a climactic end with Maldek being obliterated. Maldek's remains hit Mars with such force that the latter's surface cities on one side of the planet were totally destroyed, and most of its atmosphere was lost. This made life on Mars' surface very precarious at best, and led to planetary evacuation by the Martian survivors. Billions of refugees from both Mars and Maldek found refuge on our present moon. However, the time of the catastrophe, our moon was another satellite of Maldek, but it was artificially created with vast living areas in its interior, as Goode has previously described. The pre-Adamites inhabited the moon for approximately 440,000 years, and at some point during this period, according to information received by Goode, the moon was moved into its present orbit around the Earth. Eventually, another conflict forced the pre-Adamites to the moon, and they had to quickly move to the nearby Earth. They chose Antarctica to rebuild their civilization due in part to the existence of ancient builder race technologies, which were still functioning, as Goode explained. Then they, pre-Adamites, end up on the moon for a period of time. And then somehow they ended up getting chased off the moon. There were some attacks that occurred, and after that they fled, but their craft were too damaged to leave our solar system or make it to another planetary sphere. So since they had to crash land on Earth, they decided that they would go to this one continent that still had working ancient builder race technology that was 1.8 billion years old. The pre-Adamites only had 3 motherships to use to establish their new colony on Earth after a crash landing in Antarctica. It was the technology in these motherships that gave the pre-Adamites hope that they could rebuild their civilization. Well, they only had the technology that they had on these 3 craft with them. That's all the technology they had. So they had to cannibalize and repurpose the technology from the spacecraft once they had crash landed. And there were 3 that were extremely large. They were motherships. This is where David Wilcock, the interviewer, had some corroborating information to share from another whistleblower, Dr. Pete Peterson, about the size and location of one of the discovered motherships. David, and I want to point out, that this was one of the absolutely stunning details in which I start to ask Pete Peterson, on the phone, do you know anything about Antarctica? And he independently says, they're going to announce that they found a mothership. He only knew about one, a mothership that was 30 miles wide, mostly circular in shape, that's been found under the ice. Goode describes the pre-Adamites who settled Antarctica. They range 12-14 foot tall. They have elongated skulls. They were very spindly, thin. This suggests that the pre-Adamites were likely the prior inhabitants of a lower gravity planet like Mars, which would facilitate gigantism. After spending over 400,000 years on the Moon with its even lower gravity field, the pre-Adamites may have nationally increased in body height to finally result in their spindly 12-14 foot stature. On Earth, because of its stronger gravity, the pre-Adamites would find themselves at a clear disadvantage compared to the native inhabitants in terms of physical strength, speed and stamina. This meant that in terms of geopolitical power the pre-Adamites would have to rely on the advanced technologies they had access to, the most advanced of which were located in Antarctica. The pre-Adamites soon needed hybrids to act as intermediates between themselves and the rest of the Earth's population. While the pure-blood pre-Adamites remained in Antarctica, close to their advanced technologies, the hybrid pre-Adamites would be used to rule over humanity in the different colonies established around the planet, as Good explained. They had created hybrids because they could not operate in our environment very well. And they created hybrids of them and the humans that were here on Earth. All of the main pre-Adamites that were pure blood were down in Antarctica. There was a group of these pre-Adamites, of this pre-Adamite bloodline, that was in the Central America, South America region, and there was another completely different bloodline group, both royals, in Asia and Europe. This is consistent with what the ancient Egyptian historian, Manetho, tells us about pre-dynastic times. The gods directly ruled over Egypt, and then placed their offspring, hybrids or demigods, in the leadership positions. A similar scenario is described in the Sumerian Kings list, which suggests that these historic documents are not mythical accounts of prehistory, but accurate historical records. The pre-Adamites, however, were not the only extraterrestrial race active on Earth 60,000 years ago according to Good's sources. He says that among them was a non-human looking race, the reptilians, who quickly emerged as the pre-Adamites' primary rival and dominating planetary affairs. Good described the conflict between the pre-Adamites and the reptilians, and how to begin with, the pre-Adamites having the upper hand due to their advanced technologies. However, the reptilians would slowly gain ascendance after a series of smaller catastrophes that were a precursor to an even more destructive geological event that was to come. Apparently these pre-Adamites have been in conflicts with the reptilians for a while. These pre-Adamites they stated were not good guys at all, but were in some sort of a conflict with the reptilians, and had actually kept the reptilians in check here on the Earth during that time that they had crash-landed here. There had been a couple other smaller catastrophes that happened where they had lost their power and the reptilians always find an opportunity to come back in a moment of weakness. During the major catastrophe, about 13,000 years ago, the Antarctica continent was flash frozen during a sudden pole shift, which cut off the pre-Adamites' outposts around the world from their main base of power. Now the reptilians would become dominant in planetary affairs. But after these cataclysms that occurred on Earth, the pre-Adamites and the reptilians sort of had a truce or a treaty. And after that point, the reptilians pretty much controlled all of Antarctica and the pre-Adamites had zero ability to get access to their ancient technology, their libraries. Everything was down there. Hybrids of the pre-Adamites were able to escape the catastrophe in their global outposts, but those of the pure bloodline were stuck in Antarctica in their giant motherships. This, pre-Adamite, civilization controlled the entire planet. What little resources they had, they were able to control the planet. After this last cataclysm occurred, none of the survivors, pre-Adamite survivors, had access to their technology. So we mentioned the group that was in Asia, pre-Adamite group, and there was another one in South America, Central America. They could no longer visit or communicate with each other. They were separated. The elongated skulls found in South and Central America trace back to the pre-Adamite hybrids who ruled over their colonies in these areas. In South and Central America is where they had set up most of their enclaves. And they had been set up around other pre-Adamite structures that were now destroyed because of the cataclysm. There were huge earthquakes that basically liquefied the ground, and a lot of the buildings, massive buildings, they had just fell apart and fell and sunk into the ground. They were running the hemisphere. They were mixing their genetics with some of the indigenous people of South and Central America. That's why we have elongated skulls, beings that have a different colored skin but different genetic mix. The two major pre-Adamite colonies, one spanning Asia and Europe, while the other encompassed South and Central America, vied with each other in a competition between the bloodlines, which continues to date through two major factions of the Illuminati. And they had always had some sort of a competition between these two bloodline groups even before the cataclysm. This whole bloodline of these Cabal or Illuminati type people, they traced their bloodlines through these pre-Adamites. If we accept that reptilians are another extraterrestrial group that exercise great influence from behind the scenes, through their own hybrids, then we can see that the Earth's hidden rulers are divided into distinct factions with a long history of conflict stemming from rivalries. This is perhaps nowhere better exemplified than in the Book of Enoch, which describes different groups of angels at war with one another. In the Cosmic Disclosure interview, Good and Wilcock exchanged the following on this subject. David: so in the Book of Enoch, they are describing this group as the fallen angels. Corey: huh? David: so you're saying these pre-Adamites with the elongated skulls, that is the fallen angel storyline? Corey: it is the fallen angel storyline, yes. Many of the original refugee pre-Adamites are currently in stasis in their motherships buried under the Antarctica ice. Well, they had a number of beings that were in stasis. The information I received was that the surviving pre-Adamites, the bloodline that originally came from another planet, had put themselves in stasis before this cataclysm occurred about 12,800 years ago. They have not awoken them yet. They're trying to decide what they're going to do. Good then goes into some detail about the limited disclosure plan, which involves sanitizing the archaeological side of anything having to do with extraterrestrial life. Now, another interesting note, we do have these archaeologists and employees of various universities that are down there excavating and documenting all of this, but what they have done, they being the Cabal, I guess you'll say, they have used these large electromagnetic submarines that I discussed earlier to take a lot of archaeological items that they had found in other digs that they were keeping suppressed from humanity. They had them in huge warehouses. They were taking some of these artifacts down to Antarctica and seeding them. And this one large dig that these archaeologists are going to make public. They are also removing any body that does not look human. And a lot of the human bodies, they don't look like they were slaves. They have tunics that have gold thread weaved in the tunics. They look royal. The next step in this limited disclosure plan, according to Good, is to slowly reveal in a many decades-long process, the existence of secret space programs. So they're planning on giving us a sanitized disclosure, and then over time they will disclose the military-industrial complex secret space program. And after they do that, they'll say, oh, by the way, yeah, we've got this fairly advanced secret space program, and while we've been out to other planets, we've found very similar ruins as we've found in Antarctica. So they're going to try to trickle the information down over decades, and not immediately tell us about the ships they found and the high technology and non-humans. What Good has been told and personally witnessed in Antarctica tells us a lot about Antarctica's secret history, and the role of different extraterrestrial groups who established control over this vast high sea continent almost double the size of the lower 48 U.S. states. Good also leaves us with a profound question to contemplate: what happens when the pre-Adamites are awakened in their stasis chambers and discover our current global civilization is very different to what they may desire?